So I thought we'd do a little video on our Rover 45W Reg, the blue one, and basically it's been for its MOT. Everything's okay apart from the back brake on the passenger side is not coming up to efficiency, so we're going to take a look, see what's causing it, and hopefully sort it out. Right, so we're just taking the drum off, and on this one it's got two of those little Phillips screws, so that's the last one removed. That's what we're doing at the moment, is just sort of hooking the seals back gently with a screwdriver, or the dust covers really, just to see if there's any leakage there. As you see, quite a bit of brake dust, but that can often be normal, so that's what we're doing at the moment. Right, so what we're going to do now is see how the cylinder's working. So I'm going to put my foot on the brake, pushing gently, and we've got the crowbar there just to stop them coming out too far, but also to feel that they are pushing out properly. So that's what we're going to do next. Not ready?
Yeah. Yeah, keep pushing. Yeah, go on. Woo! Now put it on again. Woo! Let it off.
Right, so far our initial tests aren't showing anything obvious. The brakes are coming on, and there's no obvious fluid leaking. We've had the caps off, or the dust covers off, there's no fluid stuck in them, and when we've been applying the brakes with the drum off, no fluid is obviously squirting out. So what we'd do is have another little look at the other side, the back, and see what that's looking like inside. Right, so what we're going to do before we take the wheel off on the driver's side is just see how well it is kind of holding the wheel. What we do notice though is that the wheels are quite free to move, just turn the tyres with the car jacked up.
Yeah, got your foot on?
Yep.
Put it on then.
On. Yeah?
Yeah, put it on hard.
It's on hard as I can go, more or less.
You got it on there hard, yeah?
Just as hard as I can.
Yeah, it's looking alright. Let's try this side. Alright, let's go. Just try the handbrake.
Right, handbrake's on.
Yeah, off.
Off. Yes. So as you see there, we've done putting our foot really hard on the brake and the handbrake on, and it does appear to be stopping the wheel, so we'll take it off and have a look at that side. Right, so we've got the drum off on the driver's side, and although you can get dust in there, like when we opened that, we wasn't sort of really sort of shocked at it. When you look at this really is quite clean, and very little dust at all. And the other thing we did notice with that dust on the other side, yes, as I come back round to the passenger side, there was quite a lot of dust that had collected round here, and although it's not really wet with brake fluid, it's not like dry dust, it's almost sort of damp looking, and we don't fully like the look of the shoes either. They're not badly contaminated, but they're not looking quite right either. So far that's the only thing we're seeing with this passenger side. So whether there's a very slight leak, or it's leaked in the past and not working quite as it should do, we'll just have to investigate. That's the way things are looking at the moment. Right, so although there was nothing really obvious, which we always like to find, obviously this shoe, you know, the dust, as hopefully you can see if I get in close enough, does look a little bit oily and is sticking to everything, which normally it would just be very dusty or even quite clean like the other side sometimes. And as I said before, we're not too keen on the way these shoes look, so they're actually ones we've never changed because they were quite good when we got the car. So all we can do is strip them down, give them a good clean, change the wheel cylinders and the brake shoes, and hopefully that will do the job. And as we say, looking at them really, it's not looking all that great, so it's certainly worth changing. So that's what we're going to do. What I'll probably do is only show you this side coming to bits and going back together, although we will be doing both. And I just want to explain, when we were putting that bar in here and holding the shoe when we were doing that test, that was the leading shoe, so that's why we were doing it like that. And we just did a few extra tests to be fully sure, or see if we could highlight a more obvious problem, which we kind of couldn't, but it certainly doesn't look all that nice in there. So that's what we're going to do. Right, so what we're going to do to make it a bit easier to get at the brakes is take the hub off, and it's something we often do for a little bit of extra work. It makes things so much easier when you're putting the springs back and getting them off as well. So that's what we're going to do first. And that's the cap off. Normally they come off a lot easier than that one was tight. So what we've done is just leave back the little tab there, where we just sort of put a little punch mark in the bolt to lock it on, and that'll then allow us to remove it.
That gives you just that little bit of extra pull out with that, see that? And bend it. Comes straight off with no bother.
Alright, so that's the hub removed. You can see on there's the ABS ring, and there's the little ABS sensor, and you can also see that how much more sort of room and space and vision we've got just by removing that, and it certainly makes things easier to get all this disassembled and cleaning it up as well. And actually it was really nice and clean in there as well, so it shows it hasn't been opened up too much probably. Right, so the next thing to do is to remove these little clips that hold the shoes on. Some have like a little sort of spring and a push clip. These have got these little sprung loaded pieces of metal as the clip. As you can see there, the pin just comes from out the back once you've released those spring clips, and you can see the shoes have just come forward. What we've also done is took some good sort of up close pictures, so we just know the rough layout of the spring. It's always worth doing that, and of course it'll be on this video footage as well, which gives us a good sort of visual and reminder reference. But it's always worth checking in the manual as well, in case somebody has put things back wrong who last worked on the car. But it's always worth taking those pictures to give you that visual reference. That's the shoes away. Then all you need to do then is remove the handbrake cable away.
If I remember rightly, if you can get that spring back,
Right, so that's the handbrake cable removed, and in case you didn't see that, this is like the little end on it, and the spring. What we had to do was pull that spring back so that we could get that tab pulled forward over this lump and then out. And that gives you a good look at the shoes almost from the back side, and if we turn it round, that's the view we had when they were on the car. And in there is the automatic adjustment system there, and again when we change it, or we'll clean all that up, which normally means hopefully that will move a lot easier and hopefully adjust and work a lot better. As always, we've got our little plastic tray and then a magnetic tray. We've took it down to that stage. The rest we'll do when we're in the workshop. And as I say, we've got it all there, so hopefully it doesn't get lost. Any bits of metal are stuck in the magnetic tray. The next stage for us is to remove the wheel cylinder. So what we've done is clamp the brake pipe so that all the fluid doesn't leak out. You've still got to re-bleed the brakes when the job is finished. That just stops lots of brake fluid pouring out and being wasted. And then hopefully as I come round the back you can see, then we're going to have to remove the back brake pipe from the back of the wheel cylinder, and then remove the cylinder because it's difficult to get in there. Once you've removed it, I'll show you hopefully how it's fixed on there. Right, so we've removed the brake pipe off now, and what we're doing at the moment is now removing the little nuts that hold the wheel cylinder on. The good thing is they're not like the little C-clip that you have to sort of lever off and then bang back on, because that is difficult. Right, so that's the wheel cylinder removed. You can see how it goes through there and the two bolts are there, and here's the back side there, so you can see you've got the little bleed nipple where the pipe goes, and then the two bolt holes that go there, so that gives you a good view and hopefully gives you a good idea of how it fits, because it's difficult to get round there. What we did do, because they were in quite tight, those bolts, is we decided to remove this back plate and pull it forward, and it was just those 4 bolts, and being it looks sort of so grotty and rusty, what we're going to do is completely remove it, because the only thing we need to do now is take the handbrake cable out, and it's these little teeth. It's a bit of a fiddly job and you have to sort of crush them in so it will pull back through, and when you put it back in it's quite easy, because as you push it in those teeth spring out and lock it back in. And what that allows us to do is to sandblast that, clean it all up, paint it and put it back nice and tidy. And lucky enough the ABS sensor is held on with the 2 fixing bolts this side, so that was removed technically just by doing those bolts. Right, so what we've just noticed is there's a little Allen key on the ABS sensor, because that bracket is not going to fit through the little hole in the plate. So we'll undo that, remove that off, and then the sensor should go through that little hole where the rubber grommet is. Then that will all be stripped down and it'll be ready to do the same on the other side. Right, so that's the back plate completely away. As you can see, that's where the handbrake cable went in, and it's one of those things where the hole is smaller than these little springy tabs, so it can't go back, and what we had to do was squeeze them in to get it out. A fiddly job. What we managed to do was use a tie, then wedge something in from the back and slowly push those little tangs or tags in until it just popped out. So that's now out, and as we say, although a little bit fiddly, it's now going to let us clean all this back plate up and clean up all round here as well. Right, so as you can see, the driver's side is now stripped down as well, so we've got both sides to the same stage. What we're going to do now is do a little bit of cleaning on both sides and probably do some painting up as well. So we're going to continue on with that cleaning now. Right, so while we've got all the wheel and all the brakes removed, it's just giving us a chance to have a little paint up under the wheel arch. And although it didn't probably need doing because it wasn't that long ago, we did it while it's all removed. It's worth us giving another sort of coating of paint just to keep that protection up. So it's an ideal time to do it. And as you can see, we've done the same on the driver's side as well, and it's just keeping things a little bit tidier. So I just want to do this as a little bit of an update in between doing everything else. Right, so we've got everything back in the workshop, and as you can see, we're keeping all the brake parts in 2 separate trays for each side. And what we're going to be doing is cleaning everything up. Of course, we're going to be replacing the brake shoes and also the wheel cylinders, but we've got to take all the springs and bits off we want. And we have ordered a spring kit as well, but we'll keep all that until it comes through in the post and we know it's okay. What we're going to do is be sanding, blasting some of the stuff, and these backing plates that were quite messy, and one of the reasons we completely took them off as well as others was so we could give it a good clean. We've got a rough sandblast to get the real dirt off, then we're going to wire brush it and see how things are looking. And now we've got a good look at the wheel cylinders. You can see that the one that come off the better side as such is looking a lot better than the side that was down as having a problem. And you can see here all the dust has completely stuck on it, so there was certainly some sort of a leak. And actually, when we took this one out, this actual little piston here more or less fell out, so it certainly wasn't good. And I don't know if you can see, the rubber looks to be breaking up, and this seal certainly doesn't look that great either, so it certainly was getting worn. There's the inside there. I just thought I'd show you that while we've got it open, because we're buying a new set of these and not changing the seals. This is sort of the only chance to show the piston and the cylinder sort of kind of apart to give you a look at it. So yeah, that's what we're doing. So as usual, and as you've probably seen before, we're going to be sandblasting in our little cabinet. So we're just continuing to clean bits up. We're cleaning up the hub, and we're cleaning up any of the nuts and bolts as well. And that's what we're continuing to do at the moment. And hopefully, as you can see there, we're wire brushing all the bolts and any bits of metal that need cleaning up as well. And as you can see here, the back plates were quite bad, but they are beginning to look a lot better. They've been sandblasted once. We've given them a good wire brushing. It's taken quite a bit to wire brush them off. What we're probably going to do now is give them one more sandblast before we paint them, but it's certainly bringing them up clean, but shows just how sort of grotty and a rusty surface they had got. So yeah, we think definitely worth doing, especially while we're doing that job. All the bits now cleaned and wire brushed, and what we've now done is put some rust killer on these plates. As I said, we wire brushed them and sandblasted those, so they're now ready for painting. And what we're doing at the moment is just finishing putting some of the rust killer on some of the other parts. This is the hub part, just before we paint them with our heat paint. So what we're now going to do is paint all the parts we want painted. We normally always use a heat paint, like a heat brake or heat engine paint. We're going to get on with that, steadily doing all those. And as we said before, the reason we use the rust killer is, one, it kills any rust that's been left behind when we brush it. We also find it gives almost like a good undercoat, and these paints seem to take better and last longer, we've found, when we use that. So we've got those to do. We've also got the hubs down there, and we'll probably redo the brake drums as well, though they have been painted red before. Right, so we've got the back plates all painted now, and the hubs painted and cleaned up, and we've got all the bits out ready to start reassembling it. So we've got new wheel cylinders for both sides, and the new brake shoes for both sides as well. And what's good is they come with this lever also, and what we've also done is got a new spring kit, so all that can be changed. And of course we've painted those little caps that cover up the ends there, but actually they were really clean, but we still give them a nice paint just so that it's all done. So now it's a case of us reassembling it and steadily putting things all back together. And I just thought I'd add to that layer, of course we've also painted up the drums as well. And I don't know if I said that, talking about that, this car on the rear has got drum brakes, and a lot of the 45s did, but some did have disc brakes. I think mainly ones like the 1.8, that's the one that's got it on our car, whereas I think the smaller engines, or perhaps the basicer ones, tended to have the drums on. And if we ever do the disc, then we'll take you through that as well. But while we're doing the drums, we'll of course cover that. We've marked them up passenger side and the driver side so they go back on. We've also marked up the back plates, although we think they probably can't get put round the wrong way either. The new brake linings, interestingly enough, the actual thickness of the lining isn't much different to the ones we took off, so we do think it purely is age, and perhaps they were fitted in the very early days of the car, or even possibly the originals. It's just the fact that that lining has aged and lost its grip, and when you look at these new shoe linings you can sort of really see, it's probably a job on the camera, but you can really see the difference between those old shoes that come off. And I thought I'd just give you a little closer look at the new wheel cylinders. Of course both of those ends capped where the brake pipe goes in, and the bleed nipple goes in the other side, so they're all looking nice, as you can see, compared to the old ones that came off. So yeah, I thought I'd just stop filming there and get the old ones to give you a real sort of comparison to them. You can see how that rubber is beginning to really age and break up, and probably the seals inside have begun to do the same. That's still got the bleed nipple on. The good thing is in this kit you get a brand new one of those, so we can put that in. And I've also gone and got the old brake shoes, of course, as well as being dirty in comparison to the new one. You can hopefully see there that the actual distance between the two isn't really that much difference, but when you look at how nice the lining is there compared to the lining on these shoes, you can see they are quite scored, but also it's kind of lost that ability to grip, I suppose. You can certainly see there is a big difference. They've almost gone hard and shiny in comparison to the new one. So yeah, I thought that was just a nice little bit to show you those old shoes and new shoes. One, just how grubby they'd got, but of course that can be cleaned off, but the fact of the lining. And if I just turn this one over, you can see the springs again. You technically could reuse them, but they are looking pretty grotty and nasty, so that's why we decided to get a new kit, and that hopefully means they'll be working as good as they possibly can do. And if I just pan out there, you can have a little full look at everything done with some of the old bits there, as well as a comparison. Right, so we're just about to start putting everything together. We did notice one little difference from the old ones to the new ones is the handbrake lever has a little stop, as you can see as you let it go, because the springs are still linked up. This little bit here stops it going back too far. But on the new shoes, what they've done is put a nice little pin. Yeah, you can see it there, a nice little pin on the handbrake lever, so the stop is there and it just hits against the frame of the shoe. So that's a little modification they've done. Now, interestingly enough, with this is actually kind of spring loaded. Now, when we were looking through the manual, they were saying that you could technically pull out a little rubber grommet and then try and push that down if the handbrake was seized, as a sort of attempt before you pull the drum off with a puller. We couldn't really see how that would work. And in our experience, it probably, if it's seized, that wouldn't necessarily help you. We thought it does kind of look a little bit frail in some cases. So on the fact that probably is unlikely to work, having the pin built into this lever is much simpler and stronger. But we just thought we'd show you that. Right, so what we're going to do first is put the cylinders back on the back plates. As you can see, it goes in from the back, well, the inside, and protrudes through to the back, I suppose. And then we've left these two little blanking plates in so no dirt gets into the cylinder. And then, as you can see, these two bolts hold it in. I think I was saying this a little bit where we're taking it to bits. We think it's quite nicely done because it's two bolts that hold it in. Some of them were what we call like a C-clip. You had to push it through and then bang this C-clip over a clip, and it was very, very fiddly. So this for us makes it a little bit simpler. And we're putting this on the back plate first so we can get this in nicely. Then we'll put the back plate on and get it connected, and then go on to do the brake shoes as well. So that's both wheel cylinders on now, and as like when we were taking them off, I'll show you in detail just on the passenger side, but we're doing both sides. Right, so because the bolts were a bit sort of tough coming out, what we're doing is just winding the bolts in on all the 4 holes that hold the back plate on, just to kind of give them a little clean through. We're going to do it with a tap, but when we put that in, it did seem to go a little bit tight, so we didn't really want to push that, so we're just running the bolts in just to give a little bit of an extra clean and make sure they are going to go in and properly before we start putting the back plate on, and then have to sort of re-investigate it. So that's what we're doing. Just thought we'd cover that in case that's a problem you come up against. I think some of it is where the end of the bolt, where it sticks through, had gone rusty. It sort of wasn't a good bolt coming back out, but sometimes there's not much you can do about that. But by cleaning them out a little bit now, it should help when we're putting that back plate on. Right, so what we've done is just put the back plate over the stub axle, and before we bolt it up, we've put the handbrake cable through, and then we're just going to put the brake pipe onto the back of the cylinder. And we do that because it gives you a little bit of flexibility, whereas we found if you bolt it up and then try and fiddle with the handbrake cable and this pipe, you've got no real sort of flexibility. And the handbrake cable went through nice and easily. It's getting it out, as we showed you, is the problem, not pushing it back. We've now got the ABS sensor through the back plate, and we've got the little bracket there, as you can see, holding it. What you have to do is sort of adjust that so it's the right distance from that little ring with the teeth in, which we'll be doing later on. Right, so I thought we'd just come around the back here so you can see the pipe going into the cylinder, and you can see the flexibility we had. You can see that back plate moving before we put the bolts in, which we're now starting to do. So if I come back around the front,
That's it's gone straight into place, which is good.
you can see how we're putting the bolts now in the back plate, and of course the little sensor, the ABS sensor, its bracket is held on by the 2 far bolts, so that's why we got that sensor through and the bracket all ready for the back plate to go on. So initially doing them bolts up by hand, so we know they're going in well, and then we'll then tighten them up. Right, so just to do a little recap, we've got the back plate on now, we've got the ABS sensor in and through its bracket but not adjusted, we've got the wheel cylinder on with the brake pipe connected, but we haven't got the little bleed nipple in, we've just left the blanking cap there, and of course we've got the handbrake cable through, and a bit of a job to show, but a lot easier going back, as I think I said, and those little tags have just come through and then sprayed out and hold it in, so that's all ready to go back onto the shoes. So what we're going to do now is get on with the other side, which will be the same process, and once they're both at this stage then we'll be ready to do the shoes. And that's the driver's side now to the same stage, so we're now ready to fit those brake shoes. Right, so we're at the stage of putting the brake shoes back together, and it is a bit of a sort of a fiddly and awkward job. So what we have done is only done one at a time, so you can use the old one as a sort of guide to the layout. So we've got the old shoe here with still the handbrake adjuster in it, and then what we've done is laid out the rough layer of the springs here. We're going to remove this handbrake adjuster out and give it a clean, and what we've also done is we've, like before, got this brake shoe on the opposite side now assembled, so as we take this to bits you still got some sort of guide, but you have to bear in mind that the other side is almost in reverse order, which can make it confusing again, but it's still a good guide. Of course, we've checked with the manual that this layout is right, and it is making it easier having the new springs as well. So hopefully we're going to take you through that guide of reassembling them. So yeah, I think it's one of those jobs that even though you've done them a few times, if you're not doing them regularly, you kind of forget. And I think the only way you'd really get good at it is if you were doing them on a daily basis. So even if you've done them before, well, you find you still need to sort of lay them out and do them one at a time, and it really does help having that guide to look at. And even then, sometimes you lay the springs out and realise they're just not going in right, and you look at them and realise they're sitting wrong within it. So we've now got this one done, and what we're going to do now is go on and do the other side, which hopefully will be a little bit easier as we've done it fairly recently. So the first thing to do now, we've got the springs laid out in the right sort of order and right, because as you can see, for instance, this spring here, the ends are different, so it is important which way it goes round. And the same with this one, you've got a small sprung area and a big sprung area, and they need to be the same way around. As you can see there, hopefully these three springs are roughly mirroring this shoe. So now it's a case of taking this one to bits, getting that adjuster cleaned, and then putting it in here. And that's another thing, the way this adjuster fits in, it's one of those things, if you don't get it right it won't go in, and once you've got it right it just slots in to this shoe. So that's all these springs removed. All we've got to do is now remove that handbrake adjuster and give it a little clean up. But as you can see, even it's quite fiddly to take one of these to bits, and your first sort of thing when you put all this together is you want to keep it gentle in case it all comes apart, but it doesn't come apart as easy as you think. Those springs really do hold those shoes together. Right, so we've had to come inside to the vice, because what we found on this shoe, unlike the other shoe, is that the handbrake adjuster is seized, which again could be all part of some of the problems we were having with the brakes. And to get this out, it should be fairly easy, but underneath you've got like the little snail part of the adjuster, and basically that sort of judders round and adjusts the brakes over the life of the brakes, and that needs to be free moving to do that, but it also needs to be free moving to get this handbrake adjuster out. So what we've done is sprayed some WD on here. You can see this is a little sliding part of that snail, and that's how it will sort of jerk back move a bit and go back into the teeth at the new adjustment. So we're just going to let that WD soak in. Hopefully we can get it unseized, and that'll then allow us to get that out. Right, so what we're going to do now is use a punch and just knock it down. Yeah, hopefully you can see it's not a lot of movement, but it's moved down and freed up. So we reckon that was another part of the problem. One side was adjusting whilst the other side wasn't. So now that's moving about. Yeah, hopefully you can see, yeah, that's levers moving up and down now. That will come out nice and easy, and we can clean it up and make sure it can't seize, or is less likely to seize next time. And that's it out. So you can see even then with it moving, there's still quite a fiddle to get that out. So if it's seized, you're never going to get it out. Right, so we've got the handbrake adjuster all nice and clean. I just thought I'd show you it here because you can perhaps see a little bit more now the movement in it as the snail goes up to adjust, and how it can now slide backwards and forwards, and a bit of a job to explain, but it more or less links into this stationary wheel, and they've both got teeth in, so you need to make sure those teeth aren't damaged. And then as the brakes slowly wear down, this gets jumped up, or this snail moves along slowly adjusting the brakes, and the little spring keeps it locked into that wheel. Once the adjustment's there, it'll be this way up as we're assembling it, and you can see now that sliding mechanism there, and that's what had jammed and stopped us from getting this out, because you really need to be able to wiggle this adjuster about to get it out of the old shoe, and also to get it into the new shoe, and then set the zero adjustment position on these brakes when you're putting it all back. So I'll just like give you a far better look at this from where we were trying to get it out. Right, so before we put it back, we're just going to put a little bit of lubricating brake grease on that, and hopefully that will stop it seizing up so quick. But with anything, eventually there's a possibility they can seize up, and that's why you have to keep checking it. But again, it's now building up a little bit more of a picture as to why the brakes didn't come up to efficiency, because we found that perhaps the material was getting hard and getting old. Maybe that piston was starting to leak slightly, but with this adjuster seized as well, it's all building that picture up. So at least we're getting more of a definite answer there. That's it all lubricated. Now it's going to be a case of getting it into the shoe. So again, this is a bit of a fiddly job, but it's one of those things, if you get it just right and that little snail just right, it then slides in and works. And if you're struggling, you've probably got it in the wrong position. But it's one of those things, a bit like a puzzle, you've got to fiddle about and suddenly it will go in. And yeah, as you can see, it's just dropped into place, and it should actually hold in place there unless you sort of really move it about to allow you to get the rest of the springs in place. Right, so just putting a little bit of grease there on the opposite shoe, just so that that handbrake lever has got a little bit of lubrication as well, and again will be less likely to initially seize. Right, so then it just really slots into that side until the spring is on. That's the spring that goes along the top, and what it does, it what we call drops in that side and hooks in the opposite side. And again, it can sometimes be a bit fiddly to get in, because it's this spring that really holds the shoes together initially. There, it's just gone in, so it just shows it depends. The other shoe we spent quite a bit of time fiddling to get that spring in, so it is different every time. The next spring to put in is the little teeny spring that goes up the top. Yeah, so with this one, a job to show you, it hooks in there and then drops into that one. You can see there's a little kink there, so you literally have to just tap it down and it'll drop down into that hole. And that's the little spring getting in, a little bit more fiddly than the big spring this time. Now you can see it's hooking in there and dropping down into the shoe. Right, so the next thing to put back in is the little teeny spring that almost makes the adjuster a one-way. It will adjust the brakes, I suppose, tighter, but won't let them loosen off as they wear. Right, so the last bit now is to do what we call the bottom spring, and that is just a case of hooking it in one side and pulling it across to the bottoms. And that is it all together, and provided you're fairly careful, it should all stay together, so you can then put it on the car. So we've got the top spring here, and it's more or less pushed down in this side and hooked down on the lever side. Then you've got the teeny little spring on the handbrake lever side, the teeny little spring that keeps the adjuster only kind of moving in one direction to keep the brakes being adjusted, and then this bottom spring there. So hopefully, even though we perhaps couldn't show you every little bit, this gives you a good look at the layout on the shoe, which you don't often always see, and we find that so one of the most helpful things. As I said, we had the old shoe and the new shoe together. What also made it easy was we had the new and old springs, so we could lay out the old springs roughly how they were and keep a look at them for the new springs as well. Right, so the last thing to do before we put the shoes back on the car is just to get the adjuster in the zero position. I mean, the brakes are at their loosest, I suppose, and what we found works is to just push the little pin that's in the sliding position of the snail, so it loses tension and you can just pull it, or sometimes it will even spring all the way along into the zero position. And hopefully, yeah, you can see it there. It's run out of teeth, and then as it adjusts, that wheel will come up this way, pushing the shoes out, so it's in the sort of smallest position. The shoes will be in the loosest, ready to fit them, and then we will sort out the adjustment from there once they're on. So now it's time to put them on the car. Yeah, so just putting in the little bleed nipple now that we left out when we initially put the pipe in. And then once we've bled the brakes, we then put a little rubber cap over that just to stop any dirt and get it into it. And again, nicely, this came with the kit that we bought. Right, so we're now ready to put the shoes back on. We're just going to put a little bit of grease onto those textured points on the backing plate there. First thing we're going to have to do when we put them on is connect the handbrake cable. That's probably the fiddlier bit, and then it's a case of putting the pins through, then clip on and hold the brake shoes on. Right, and that's the handbrake cable, and what we had to do was pull the spring back while I've used some pliers to pull it in and round, but with two of us doing it, it went in a lot easier. Right, so that's the brake shoes roughly positioned. Now it's a case of using the pins and these clips to hold them in, which again come with that little spring kit we bought. Right, and that's the clip on. All we've got to do is do that 4 more times. As you might have seen, that is the older clip, because what we've found is that these clips and the original pins are different, and basically if you see the end of the pins there, the original ones have got a much bigger tip. These are teeny and actually pull through the hole that's in the back plate, and these clips are really only designed to go onto these pins, so we've had to use the original pins for that. So we'll get on and put the other 4 on now. Right, so that's the 2 pins and clips on this side done. The last thing to do is to just put the little rubber grommets in the back of those 2 holes that are left, and then that's sealed from the back side. Right, that's the shoes all fitted on the passenger side. All we've got to do is the same on the driver's side as before. It's exactly the same as this side, so we'll get on and do that and then carry on with the next stage. So now it's time to put the hub back. We've pushed the ABS sensor out the way on its a maximum adjustment, I suppose. We're going to put a little bit of grease on the shaft there, and also just check that it's all clean round there, and that little groove at the back is clean as well. Once we've got it on, we give it a rough tighten, and then we'll set the ABS sensor back to the right sort of distance. I'll just put a little bit of grease inside the hub as well.
Just nip that up. We won't top it yet.
Guys, we've just got that tight, but it's not set to its torque setting, and of course we've also got to put that little notch back down on the bolt as well, but that's once the torque setting's done. What we're going to do now is set the ABS sensor. You've got this little hole here and you can see through in, hopefully you can see that. You've just got to get the right distance. Right, so we've now set the ABS sensor. Hopefully you can see there's that little bolt hole there, and that's what you undo to loosen it and redo up to tighten it. And you can just see there that there's a feeler gauge moving up and down. If you pull that feeler gauge right out, you can see that come out, and that's 0.5 the gap. So that's the end of that sensor to those little lines, the sort of reluctor wheel there. Just you've got the right distance. We think really it's mainly to make sure it's not so close it's rubbing on it, or so far away it can't sense it, and that sort of gap looks about right. So hopefully that will work. Right, so before we put the drum back on, we'll just give it a little bit of clean with some brake cleaner, and getting any residue or dirt that's left in there. And that's the drum back on. So the last thing we will need to do then is just torque up the hub nut. Right, so that's the driver's side all back together, just like the passenger side. And once again, all we've got to do now is put the drum part back on. So we're now just torquing up, and we'll be doing that on both sides, the driver's and the passenger, so I'll show you that. And once again, we're just torquing up the passenger side, which is the side we've mainly been showing you on the process. And then we're just staking the nut just to make sure it can't come undone. And that's the last bit, putting the little cap on. Right, so now it's time to bleed both back brakes. We're just going to do the backs and see how things go. Hopefully that's all we should need to do. Here's the reserve wire. The first thing we've done is put some cloth or tissue around so there's no spillages. We'll top it up to the top, and then I'll go round to the back and show you what we're going to do. We use what we call the old-fashioned method, where one of us sit in the car and pump the brake pedals while one of us undo the little bleed nipple and let the fluid out into a jar, and I'll show you that in just a second. Right, so that's the brake fluid all topped up. We just put the lid on gently, not doing it up, so hopefully nothing would ever splash out. And we put the brake fluid bottle down on the floor with the lid done up, so if it ever did get knocked over, it certainly wouldn't go over the car, because that's what you don't want, is it damaging the paintwork. So we'll now head round the back and I'll show you what we do there. Right, so we've got our special bit of pipe on the brake bleeding nipple. As you can see, it's got a special end so it seals onto that brake bleeding nipple there, so no air can get sucked in. And then what we do is put it into just an old jar, a hole through the lid, and that end of the pipe has got a little one-way valve again so that no air can get sucked back in. And then one of us will go inside the car, pump the brakes, the air and any old fluid will come out. Right, ready. So hopefully you can hear and see the brake pedal being pumped, and you can see some of the air bubbles and the fluid coming through the tube. Yeah, that's enough. Right, so what we're going to do before we just do a little bit more pumping is just check the level of the fluid. Not too much has dropped, but I'll put a little bit more on, and then we'll pump the brake pedal a few more times just to check no more air is going to come out. Right, I'm ready. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
Yeah, you still got enough fluid.
Yeah.
Keep going then.
1, 2.
Hold it down next side.
3.
That's it. Keep it there.
And as you can see, I'm just holding down the brake pedal there so that we can tighten up that bleed nipple so no air can get in.
Yeah.
Right, so what we're going to do now is just check we've got a good brake pedal, and also look underneath and check that there's no sort of leakages from any joins. Right, pushing.
Off.
Off.
I think I just the ratchet go.
Yeah, I heard something click.
Hey?
I heard something click.
Yeah, I think that's what I heard then. Right. Okay, pressurise again. Off.
Off.
Right, now give it 2 or 3 pumps, get these adjusters going.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep going. Right, what's the handbrake like, Daniel? No, slow, I want to count the clicks.
Well, just see what it felt like. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's getting tight, and 7, fairly tight. 8, 9 is really tight. I don't know if you'd pull it up as far as 9 clicks.
Right, let go.
Yeah, so basically we're just going through and checking there's a pedal, the brake stopping, seeing if it looks like the adjusters are set and how the handbrake, so we'll continue on with that. What we are going to do is just adjust the handbrake, because it's not really bad, but we think it might need a little bit of adjustment. What you can do to do that is on the back centre console, you see we're in the back here, if you remove the ashtray and lift it up and out, I think some ashtrays are different, but they'll all come out fairly similar. Hopefully you can see in there, yeah you can, there's that little adjuster in the middle there. Yeah, you can see it there, and we're just going to do a little bit of adjusting and see how the handbrake comes up. Right, so as you can see there, we've got the spanner on the little nut, and basically we give it a few turns, and then what we do is just see how the handbrake feels, and you know, we do that until you get I think sort of around about 5 to 7 clicks, and it feels fully on is normally what you're looking for. So we'll get on with that and adjust it. Right, so although the spanner did work, what we found is an easier way to adjust it is actually to get a socket on there and then bring the bar underneath, because this carpet is a bit flexible, put a ratchet on it, and that's making it a lot easier to adjust it and try it, adjust it and try it. So we just thought we'd cover that as something you can do. So what we're going to do now is just see how much better the handbrake is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is getting tight, 6 is really tight, and 7 is even tighter. So yeah, that's feeling a lot better than it was.
Normally without counting the click. Yeah, that sounds alright.
Yes, that's feeling just a little bit better, so we're going to leave it at that. Right, so that is the job finished. All that's left to do is to put the wheels back on, so I'm going to end the video there. Hopefully it's been of use to you. As always, they're not really a how-to video, but more a visual reference. So if you're doing the job, it just gives you a visual reference ahead, or maybe you're just interested in how all this comes to part and how it kind of works. As always, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to look at some of the other videos we do. Like the video if you liked it, and of course you can always visit our Instagram and Twitter page, and links are on the main page of this YouTube channel. As always, thank you very much for watching.